this content is for kids.
It's not for kids.
Isn't that what I said?
No, it's not for kids. If you are 13 years or younger, this is not for you. Do I have to kill somebody in order to actually make that point across?
No, man, you don't have to kill
Wait
no one.
a second.
Oh, no.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. I'd buy that for $1.
So,
Get back
greetings, fellow viewers, to our extended Horrorween. So we ended out October with the final Friday the 13th film.
None others.
And then we looked around and said, oh, there's a couple more.
No,
Maybe a handful.
they lied to us.
Now,
I was promised the final Friday, goddammit.
I'll admit, I might have pre-ordered that set myself if it was only 4 films.
Yes.
Because it would have been so much cheaper.
So,
Or would it?
what was that?
Have a spare with the poster.
So with that being said, we do have our coverage of Friday the 13th Part 5 and 6. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody so that we can take a good look at the trailer for that. So let's start sharing that. So y'all should be seeing my trailer for that. So let's get that up there.
Is the sound on?
Is it not?
I'm not hearing it.
Oh, well, let me get that taken care of. That's the problem with these technical difficulties.
Technology.
So let's take that, and then this time, share computer sound. Maybe that'll work a little bit better sometimes. So let's rewind. All right. Can y'all hear it?
There we go.
We can't get those YouTube strikes out.
If the memory of Jason still haunts you, you're not alone. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
Severe trauma at age 12. Brutal self-defense, murder of a psychopathic killer. Boy, they've given him every therapy they can think of. It's wonder his mind isn't fried with all the drugs they've given him.
The mindless, murderous fury that was buried with Jason has been reborn.
Reborn!
Terror has become child's play. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
I have another. So, that's basically our Friday the 13th trailer. So I'm going to cancel that and get us back to our view. So stop sharing. So, yep, there we go. And so this film, of course, looking at that trailer, I can understand why people might have been a little miffed at how it turned out. But there's definitely setting expectations that may not have been met precisely.
They pulled a little sneaky there.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and dive
Bait
into
and
this.
switch.
I don't know why I love it. Like nowadays, being lied to by ad work or posters for movies, like it's just blatant trickery. I love it.
In a way, though, I mean, isn't it better than having the entire movie ruined by modern trailers?
I was just gonna say that like honestly, I kind of take the opposite approach where I like the fact that not all trailers. I mean, I think to this day still you have trailers that, for the most part, they reveal too much or they present the movie in such a whatever, depending on the movie, of course.
Yeah.
But like the genre, but like movies will often fit way too hard into genre norms for commerciality's sake without either deliberately tricking the audience or without playing with their heads, or because nothing like that. Now that's not to say that all of them do that. Like some of my favorite relatively recent trailers have been a lot of them have been teaser trailers. Like I'm thinking of the Watchmen teaser trailer that used "The Beginning is the End is the Beginning" by the Smashing Pumpkins.
Right.
The teaser trailer for David Fincher's "The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo" was great. Like that was very subliminal, and you can tell that he had experience with making music.
Mm-hmm.
And some people complained about like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 trailer having scenes that weren't in the movie and that kind of stuff, which honestly I would prefer that than have the whole movie spoiled. I'd like to be kept guessing, because and I apparently in the art of trailer making, they actually have a science to it that kind of tells you what demographics are going to like this much of the information for this kind of story or whatever. Like Titanic has actually one of the longest trailers for a big movie, and it actually reveals quite.
Movie.
Well, it was a long movie, but they also tell a lot about the plot, and then you can get really.
You kind of have to with
To
that
be
one.
fair, we all knew the ending.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
The ship does not sink.
Most people with Titanic will be like, "Well, I know how it's going to end," so you got to let them know there's more to it than that.
Jacob, fake news. Okay, the Titanic, it never sunk. Okay, but point is, like, trailers. I think that a little deception or a little teasing, I think, is a very good thing. Like, Hitchcock's trailer for Psycho gets praised a lot because it's kind of like the anti-movie trailer, because he just walks around. It's him walking around the set and describing what's going to happen, but he keeps teasing you with all of these really, salacious things that went on, and so but of course that's Hitchcock. He's the master of that. But with this one, it does set you up. This one does set you up for a certain kind of outcome, but I don't mind the fact that it doesn't play out that way, because I've seen a lot of movies in my day, and I really, really hate being able to predict what's going to happen just based on the trailer, or you see the movie and you're like, remember all the parts in the trailer? Those were the best parts, And oftentimes studios,
they blatantly lie to us in this, because you are supposed to be under the assumption that it's Jason till that first moment where Roy ruins it by staring right into the camera. But lie to me all you want. I like it when there's like a dude with a mustache fighting a creature that's not even in the movie on the cover or something. Like that just makes me laugh so hard. So any type of deception is good in my book.
I do agree with the whole idea of a trailer that is less is more. I do agree wholeheartedly that Watchmen was one of the best trailers. It really was a great one. And another one that was absolutely great, and I know Brandon and I have talked about this one. I saw the trailer and I was like, holy crap, I want to see this movie. And then I saw the second trailer and I was like, And then I saw the movie, and I was like, oh, it's the second trailer, but longer. And that was The Secret Life of Pets. Like, the first trailer,
Oh, yeah.
so good.
First trailer made you want to watch.
Well, that movie was rather disappointing, except for like the trailer was a lot funnier than the actual movie, and especially given the fact that they ended on "Bounce" by System of a Down. I was like, yes, there's still the best part of the movie, but yeah, I mean, I've always been of the opinion that a movie trailer at its best does not, at least for me, does not need to sell the plot of the movie. It needs to sell the feeling of the movie, and it needs to really get into your subconscious. And much like good advertising, because a movie trailer is advertising, and good advertising, at least in the modern conception of advertising, is meant to resonate with you on a subconscious level. And that's why that Watchmen trailer works so well. That's why a lot of the best trailers, like have you ever seen even going back to 1971, if you've ever seen the teaser trailer for Clockwork Orange, like that functions very much on what we would now call a modern trailer aesthetic, where it's like lots of quick cuts, lots of almost subliminal imagery, things like that.
So, Dane, is this your first time watching the fifth film?
It is not, which actually, before we get too far, so part 1, 10 kills, part 2, 9, part 3 kills, 12, part 4, 14 kills, and then part 5, 21 kills.
Holy crap.
They amped it up.
That was the record at the time.
Yeah, it's in the Paramount era of Friday the 13th films, it has the largest body count. Not the largest body count overall, if you're counting the New Line films, but of the Paramount films, it has by far the largest body count.
Gotta count that up.
Or at least largest of confirmed kills, because who knows how many? Because I don't think there was ever a full count. There's still a full count on Jason Takes Manhattan.
And we can't count, speculative stuff or off-screen or whatever. But I saw this film, and it's funny because this is regarded as being one of the worst ones, but then James Rolfe, he had an interesting review of it when he did his Friday the 13th series, and he was saying basically it depends on, in his estimation, it depends on how you look at the series, because like he liked the viewing the series through the eyes of like urban legends, because having grown up in New Jersey and everything, he was surrounded by a lot of urban legends and things like that. And the first Friday the 13th is revealed to be taking place in New Jersey. And so the idea being that everybody has their own perception of what Jason is like, and did he drown in the lake, or did he survive to be a hermit? What is he? Is he supernatural? Or he presented a theory that the other movies could have taken and run with, but they didn't, which was the idea being that all of these killings that are attributed to Jason are actually just all these copycats through the years that take on the persona of Jason as the public consciousness knows him to be, and that's part of how he keeps coming back, is because nobody can forget him. And that's an interesting idea, and I'm with him in the sense that I think that would have been a really interesting direction to take the series, and it would explain why Jason's physical appearance, little details here and there, why they change from movie to movie, prior to part 6, of course, where it's for sure that he's supernatural. I think that would have been pretty neat, but obviously they didn't really go anywhere with it. But I do like the fact that we have a person doing Jason-like things who, spoiler alert, is not Jason. And I think that provides a twist that I guess that the fan base must not have taken to kindly, and yet I think that it works in a different sort of way in comparison to like what the twist would have been with Mrs. Voorhees having been the original killer and all that stuff. So I mean, I think that it was a noble effort on that front to at least try to do something different without having to explicitly evoke the supernatural, even though I would assume that the supernatural had been kind of evoked already, given just how much abuse Jason takes in the previous films. That would have surely killed a normal person prior to that. So I think definitely a noble effort. It does open up a lot of possibilities that unfortunately don't really pan out to anything, but at least they opened up that can of worms in an interesting way. And it's one of those things where the characters, again, there are no really deep characters in this series, but these ones are definitely some of the most memorable, for better and for worse. Usually for worse because they're kind of annoying, actually really annoying in certain areas, but you do at least remember them. They don't just fade into the background because they're very, very much in the foreground in all kinds of ways. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, I think that it's better than a lot of people necessarily give it credit for, but only insofar as what it could have been and what the possibilities introduced, what they lead you to. You can go down some interesting intellectual rabbit holes, but it's such that I think.
Well,
Go ahead.
This has some of the most memorable kills in the series, and I think it's really underappreciated.
Well, Dustin, why don't we go to your first experience with? I'm going to guess it's not your first time, though.
Oh, definitely not. So I, like a lot of people, picked up the Shout Factory set. I pre-ordered the Shout Factory set right away when they announced it. And it's my third edition of these movies that I've owned. Like, I first saw this movie, I think it's a little difficult to remember because it's been such a long time. But I first saw this movie, I think I downloaded it to my computer when I first started getting into horror. And since then, I have owned several copies of it. Wow, my train of thought is just all over the place. Anyway, I saw it for the first time a pretty long time ago, and I remembered it was part of a marathon that I was doing, so it didn't really leave too much of an impression on me at first. But over time, I've grown to like this one. I don't have a ranking of the series, because I enjoy them all about the same. But I really appreciate this one for what it is. The kills are so nasty that I don't really mind that it's not Jason for once. I mean, yes, it's a weird, jarring revelation. But I think this movie is definitely better than people give it credit for.
Very good. How about you, Mo? Was this your first time seeing it?
Oh, no, definitely not. I used to rent it from the video store as a small child because it was one of the ones they had, and eventually acquired my own copy in the great tape club hall of the mid-90s there, and I used to watch it fairly frequently. I mean, as a kid, I was bummed on it. I don't think I put as much thought into it as maybe someone who's older, but I was definitely bummed it wasn't Jason. I still thought it was a fun movie, though. It's got good kills. Enchiladas, like the whole demon thing was funny, because when you're like 8 or 9, poop is funny for sure. And I don't know, man. I thought it was like, the fact that there was another little kid playing a prominent role in the sort of finale of the film kind of had me jazzed as a little guy too, for sure. And over the years, I definitely have grown to appreciate it a lot more than I did as a kid. For pretty much everything Dustin just said. It's got the nicest set of tits in any Friday movie too, so that needs to be pointed out.
Oh,
several
In a manner of
check out,
speaking,
too.
yes.
I figured I'd let somebody else say it.
So, Dave, was this your first time seeing Part 5?
No. I was introduced to the Friday the 13th series many years ago. First on VHS, and then eventually I ended up owning the set that Jacob actually owns. I never did get into the Steelbook genre. But I did, however, pick up a copy of my own Shout Factory version of Friday the 13th as well.
Yes.
But, well, I am the cutest board. Resistance is futile. Anyways, but
Kinky.
I think this film is very much underappreciated, just like Yumo and Dustin. This definitely has a lot of bloody kills and definitely some gratuitous titties that you get throughout the film. And
I think it was. Wasn't it directed by a porn director?
yes.
He used
Was
to have
it?
the nudes.
Dan Steinman. He started out in porn.
Oh, nice.
Well,
He's better for it too, you know.
the line between 80s slasher film and porn, the line between them is a bit more blurred as far as like, as far as like the appeal and everything, you know.
Maybe keep going, Dave.
To be honest, many independent films these days scourge the line, so it doesn't really matter to me which age the titties fly in. But in any case, I relatively like the fact that it's not Jason through here. I mean, the fact that you have two different killers that could be, you know, the person going around killing. I like that factor. I mean, they make you think it goes one way when it's technically another. You know, that kind of thing. When it ultimately adds up to being someone you didn't think about. You know, till you actually saw the ending. So to me, I relatively enjoyed this film. I mean, I think the storyline goes pretty good. It goes pretty well, and this is kind of like your mid-purgatory level of the Jason franchise before we get the fleshed out version that we see for the rest of the series. So
Literally fleshed out.
Well, we could argue he was slightly defleshed, actually, but you know, interesting.
There is a dream Jason that's there is a zombified dream Jason in this.
True. It's that way in a way, if you think. But how about you, Forrest? Was this your first time seeing the fifth film?
Absolutely not. I was 13. I was 13, and when I was 13 years old. I went and rented what were at the time all the Friday the 13th movies. There was 9 movies up to that point. This was about 20 years ago, and I remember. But yeah, I did rent and watch it back then when I was 13. And there was a short period of time where it was actually my favorite in the franchise, just for how sleazy and exploitative it was compared to the first 4 films or the next 7 films. Well, I don't know. Maybe Jason Goes to Hell or the remake could go toe to toe with it in terms of sleaziness. But yeah, it was my favorite for that for a period of time because of that, and also because it had the highest body count in the franchise. I don't know. My opinion has bounced around. My opinion on it has bounced around over the years, from loving it to now I'm kind of back to where I was when I was 13, where it's fun. It's sleazy, but it's sleazy but fun. I was actually fortunate enough last year to go see it in a double feature, in a 35mm double feature with Jason Takes Manhattan. which was a lot of fun. And I also, on top of that, I'm at this point where I've seen nearly every movie in the franchise in theaters. But also, I did also. Although watching it over the weekend, I did kind of feel like Tommy that the character of Tommy is very underdeveloped compared to 4 and 6. He seems very underdeveloped, and he feels very like a non-entity in this one. He does like he's there. He doesn't really talk much, but they don't really give him much to. I feel like they didn't really give him much to do until the last 20 minutes.
They could definitely have like expanded more.
Yeah.
But
he does have like some quality early UFC level fighting skills, though.
Heck yeah.
that was probably the only times where I felt like he really stood out early on in the movie. But beyond that, he just feels like a non.
He Pele kicked that friggin' hillbilly too. That was a good part. But...
and then he flipped Eddie. And then he flipped Eddie in the dining room. Kidding.
He didn't even get his stew.
Well, it's a kind of endemic of this series as a whole that the one character that we kind of sort of get to know, that actor changes 3 different times, and you would hope that they would have stuck with one and allowed us to get to know him, or to at least portray the character consistently, because you're right that he does take very much a backseat to the other weirdos that he's surrounded with.
And the characters in this one are a lot more. They're a lot less like characters compared to the other movies, and they're more like caricatures or cartoon characters, like the hillbillies, or the nymphomaniac, or the 2 nymphomaniac teenagers who keep sneaking onto their property.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at the very least, I'll give them credit that they are at least honest about the fact that our characters are all a bunch of certifiably insane people, because that, gives a reason for why these people continually behave in these ways that you're like, these just defy logic, and it's like, oh, okay, well, they're a bunch of nymphos, they're a bunch of, homicidally intended people, and it's just like, well, that at least fits into this world that you're creating.
So, Jake, is this your first time checking out Part 5?
It is. There had to be one of us. And so far, this was probably, I don't know if it was maybe this one or the third one that was my least favorite so far. I mean, they've all been watchable enough. But actually, I was having a really funny thought when Dan was going on about the possible different Jasons or whatever. I don't know why my mind went to this, but I was thinking it's like Santa Claus, and the magic has to be passed down to new generations.
Oh man.
Well, I mean, it's not that far. It's not that far removed, is it? It's.
Dude, imagine that scene like from the Santa Claus, only you're putting on Jason's slimy ass clothes and the mask. Like, I guess I got to do this now.
Well, I could buy it. I mean, that would be. I think that would be a pretty interesting angle to take. And it would also explain why, especially a character that's so steeped in urban myth, why that character would endure so long in universe. I mean, it's because, which I guess in some ways that's kind of what they were trying to get at with Jason Goes to Hell, with the idea that the soul of Jason or whatever can body bounce, and so he's more than. So he's but in other words, just being more than just one singular person in one singular body, which that's at least they're in the right direction on there. Whether they got there is up for debate, of course, but they're thinking at least.
Such a lovely thought. What's
Wes Craven's Shocker.
Yeah.
We don't speak of that.
Get a body changing people.
One thing I did have to mention about this was it did provide me a little bit of amusement regarding the cast. First of all, the fact that one of the characters is actually named Voorhees, and I guess we could talk on that later, but I did find that rather amusing.
Oh yeah, Dennis Voorhees.
Yeah, yeah. And then the last one, the guy that runs the halfway house, Matt, is played by Richard Young. And I saw him, I'm like, that dude looks so familiar. It's like, I know that guy. Why do I know that guy? And I may have remembered him from Cheers. He had one appearance on Cheers, and he had a couple of others. But what was fresh in my mind when I watched this, and it's just a weird quirk of timing. But of course, I think we made reference last week to this, but I'll go ahead and, we did lose Sean Connery about a week ago. And
rest in peace.
So, rest in peace. So I decided to check out Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade because Dr. Jones Sr. is like his best role, I think. And if you remember the opening sequence with another late actor, the late River Phoenix, in one of his last roles, there's that opening prologue where a young Indy goes on an adventure and somehow manages to explain almost every aspect of the two previous films in one afternoon. His fear of snakes and his obsession with things should be in the museum and all this stuff. And one of them is his getting the famed Indy fedora from a character named in the credits as Fedora. And it's this actor. And I'm like, holy crap, that's kind of cool.
He played Coronado.
No, he wasn't Coronado. Coronado was the cross was named after a conquistador. He was simply a digger who was looking for treasure, and again, he's credited and cast as Fedora. Just like I think the guy he's working for was credited, I think, by like the name of his something. Like they had very simple names for that group. But anyway, I just thought that I was like, holy crap, this is someone that I do recognize very, very much. Now, I will say I thought Corey Feldman was wasted. He basically has one brief role. It's a glorified cameo and not even all that impressive.
Apparently, they wanted to bring him back for a full role, but he was committed to the Goonies, so he couldn't.
He made the better choice.
He do this on like a day or something.
He did make the better choice.
Well, his star power, because of the Goonies and because of movies yet to come, his star power was starting to take off, and he apparently was quite the little shit back then. So I mean, even if it wasn't the case, he would have been a major diva about it.
Right.
But yeah, it's one thing for a fedora to teach a young boy self-reliance.
So let's dive into the movie itself. Of course, my first time watching it is around the same time I watched most of the others for the first time, with the exception of the first two. Because essentially, I, in a way, Jacob is doing essentially what I did, except a little bit later on in time. Because I think you watched at least the first one earlier.
I saw the first one a few years ago.
Yeah. So, and I'd seen the first and second one earlier, but then I watched all the rest of them in a marathon after I got that Crystal Lake set. So the fifth one has always been my favorite of the series. And for multiple reasons. One, I liked, but a lot of it, but the issues I see in it are lost opportunities more than anything else. When the movie had some of the most fun with kills, it had a really cool concept, and it had a lot of potential that could have even followed it into the later films, but it just all crashed and burned, unfortunately, thanks to others saying, no, you got to bring back dead Jason because people don't want anybody but that Jason. which is a sad thing because I do think that it was a lost opportunity. Looking back at it, you can actually pick up a couple of signs that they even tried to point to so you could see who the killer was at the beginning. If you look close enough, you could actually see his reaction at that scene.
Yeah, it was so subtle.
It was. You had to look for it. And again, that's but a good reason to rewatch the film. So as we go into the plot, it's a pretty simplistic plot. Is we've got this home for wayward kids, basically, getting rehabilitated, put back in the community. Maze people having trauma and just incidents of a juvenile delinquency. And of course, they're being rehabilitated, and Tommy Jarvis is one of those because he has a hard time not having somebody sneak up on him and then him beating the crap out of them, prepared to fight Jason. We even see that as illustrated by the one that we were talking about earlier, that zombie Jason, a dream that he has at the beginning. So, which kind of plays out in part 6 for reals. But of course, everybody is, of course, denying this. Jason is supposedly cremated, which they kind of changed that around later.
The sheriff did ask the mayor if he saw, or was it the mayor that asked the sheriff if they saw the body being cremated?
Yeah. So it is what it is. There's some the biggest discrepancy will be when we talk about the ending, but to me, the whole plot, you get him together there, and you get introduced to all these kids, except for this one slightly annoying one, who apparently just asks the wrong number of annoying questions and leads to one of the more brutal kills at the beginning, which is not by that Jason at all, but by a similar axe-wielding maniac.
Well, I like that whole thing thematically because on the one hand, there's a certain degree of delightful absurdity to the idea of the whole plot of the film being predicated on a chocolate bar, as James Rolfe pointed out. But at the same time, I do like how thematically it works insofar as showing that everyone is only one axe swing away from being a Jason himself. And I think that, again, that kind of fits into the theme of the film, which, again, they could have taken that and run with it a lot more. I do think that it's in there somewhere. It's just perhaps not fleshed out as well as it could have been, obviously, but it's and I do really believe this, that if you put anybody, mentally ill or not, you put anybody under enough strain, enough emotional distress or just sheer annoyance for a long enough period of time, they will turn homicidal. Because I think all of us have that in us. And so again, if you were trying to do a deeper movie, I think you could take that and run with it.
Yeah, I had to bring up the killing joke because that was the one where the Joker said, all it takes is one bad day.
It's right.
You and to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, I think he's right on the money there, that it, I know that the whole premise of the story is an attempt to disprove that, but it turns out that, in fact, Batman and the Joker are really not as dissimilar as they appear. Just kind of two sides of the same coin. And I tend to have kind of a more behavioralist perception of human behavior, human psychology, and so in that respect, it's like this is like a milder kind of exploitation movie example of something that I think is very serious, which is that, you put anybody in a bad enough situation for a long enough period of time, and you will get someone who's homicidal. And, this is, again, taking many shortcuts, but I think the idea is certainly in there.
So, and Tommy, of course, for those who are just getting to us, in the last movie, he essentially just killed Jason as a child, a little small child. So
he didn't just kill him. He
he double tapped
murderized him.
Yeah.
So he made sure Jason was dead, and and this also introduced a rather colorful cast of characters, as was said earlier, cartoonish cast, where you have our fornicators, as they call them,
Nymphos.
Mm-hmm.
You had the kind of redneck people who are like, "Get off our land!"
Oh, what was that?
Yeah, I don't know, but it is basically like if you made a slasher movie out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good. I like the setting. I like the concept that they had going. Because I'm sorry, but yes, Tommy Jarvis would have been badly scarred by doing that whole thing.
Yeah.
And having him go in there, it's pretty cool. You had like a bunch of troubled ones. They didn't all seem super troubled. Of course, the one that stands out the most is the small child that you have that's not even a part of that. But
he was just there as his grandfather who worked there.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy does still have his horror mask collection because they wanted to do an attachment to the from the first to the second, just so he could be shown as that proto potential Michael Myers character.
Oh, and I will admit, I kind of like that part where even though this kid is clearly high strong, he is clearly ready to snap at the slightest provocation, people keep trying to scare him.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? So I liked it when that guy was trying to scare him, and he kind of turned around, and he goes, "Ooh," and he's got his mask on and scared the I was like, serves you right, you idiot.
Which, now, isn't it interesting that you have our central character who has had the most intimate contact with Jason out of all of them? Very, very intimate contact with him up to the point of murder. And yet, his whole quest throughout the whole movie is to not snap again, to be sane, to be normal, and,
Get it together. Get it together.
Exactly. Well, and for most of the movie, he does a comparatively better job than people that haven't had intimate contact with Jason, who, might be really, massive nymphos or might be homicidal in their own way for more petty reasons and things like that. So isn't that interesting? It sort of throws into question who the real insane person is.
Mm-hmm. So any others have any interest to talk about some of the stuff at the beginning, including the crazy axe murder that happens? We touched on that with, the one bad day. This guy seems to have had lots of bad days.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think he just realized, like, in prison, he could at least trade smokes for drugs or something, so he just axed the kid to get a free ride, and,
that dude was, like, high-strung.
He is into it, man. The way he's swinging on him is just, it always hypes me up.
But
it's a shame, though.
And it doesn't take long to go from that to seeing the killing start, which when you find out the motivation of you know why. But you do have several, like, other characters. You have the grandfather. You have the brother, the big brother, who, had too many, had a lot of extra food that he liked to share.
Those enchiladas, man.
And has a very unfortunate death. They're all unfortunate, but that one's really unfortunate. Those enchiladas.
What was his crime? I still don't get it. Like, most of them, they follow a thing, but he had a girlfriend, and he had some enchiladas she probably made, and he used the portaloo and just gets impaled.
It's the connection to everybody in there. I mean, everybody had a connection to the... basically, he was getting revenge on everybody that was even remotely connected to that home. So all the kids, all the extras there, and that brother was just one of those relatives of the kids. He's probably looking to kill the little brother, and
Well, and as we as we find out later on, the kid that was killed was in fact dude's son. So,
Well, and his motivation, comparatively speaking, there's much more of an overt cause and effect, which again, that's sort of why Part 5, I think, has more merits to it than others in the series necessarily do, because the cause and effect is a bit more clear, which it does kind of beg the question with Jason himself having done all of his killing and stuff, and the mystery behind it, and yet there being some pretty clear ties to like the teenagers that drink and have sex and do stuff that they're not supposed to, which on the one hand we're led to believe that it's because of the fact that those were the kinds of kids that let him drown all those years ago. But it also does make you wonder, was Jason like the original proto-incel, but like a supernatural version? I don't know.
So, Mama's boy.
So with that, you've got this Jason doing these kills. You have sort of a mystery going around, which is, who is this Jason? Is it the dead Jason come back, which many people were hoping for? Was it Tommy? There was that supposed thing. Was it somebody else in there? And this is one of the things. When I said that this film had a lot of potential, it really kind of squandered that, where they could have done a lot more to make us guess who was killing. Jason come back from the dead. Tommy Jarvis, they could have really...
But really, in all to God's honesty, Friday the 13th, all we really wanted to do was just to see a bunch of kills. To be honest,
that's their justification.
On a storyline.
Well, it really delivers on this one. Really delivers on that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm with Brandon on this one. That
I think my favorite.
It's but I'm with Brandon on this one because and I don't think it's an either or situation. I think you can have like this really bloody, nasty horror film, but you can also have it be about something, and you can have a character who's fraught with anxiety as far as the darkness inside of him. Will he become like Jason, if indeed the temptation towards that kind of homicidal evil is so strong with these other people that didn't even know him? And it's there's a lot of potential to mine there. It's the temptation towards the dark side. It's Empire Strikes Back stuff, and that's all there to be played with. And I really believe you could do that while also delivering all of the stuff that a lot of the fans would have wanted. But unfortunately, that kind of is endemic of the series as a whole. A lot of potential that unfortunately doesn't really go to nearly as many of the interesting places that it could have. It's anything that is there is kind of buried in the text rather than really being fully realized.
Not to say that I don't like the movie by any means. Like I say, it's still my favorite in the franchise. I'm just thinking to myself, this would have made it even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's how
And I make no bones about my thing that what Dave was just saying. If it's all kills, I check right out. I could give a crap about that kind of movie. So that's, yeah. I kind of like a little bit of story.
Friday the 13th falls in a line with a lot of the 80s kill movies.
Yeah.
And to me, the storyline doesn't have to be like a big storyline. I mean, the characters, you cannot make them so hateable that you will dislike them. You will have to at least make them at least somewhat, some of them at least somewhat likable. But that being said, I want to see how bloody it can get. I want to see how many dismemberments there can be. I want to see them die in so many different ways,
For sure.
It's
Everyone
beyond
needs a hobby.
Well, but here's a good example of a movie that was able to kind of have its cake and eat it too. Was Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like that did a remarkable amount of faithfulness to the novel, really squeezing every amount of potential out of the character of Dracula, while also at the same time having really top-notch vampire effects and giving you above and beyond, what you would want from a vampire movie. So, I mean, I think you really can do both. And if anything, what you do with one should hopefully complement the other.
Or perhaps to give, because I don't really think Dracula and think like super bloody movie. But
no,
like,
but I mean, like it exploited everything that a vampire movie could possibly have in terms of, showing what this this king of the vampires, what this person can do. So that I'm saying, like, you could do the slasher equivalent of that.
Well, what I was going to say was, if you want an example of one that gives you your gore count and your bloodthirsty itch is scratched, but you also get a really damn good story, there was always Let the Right One In, which definitely, yeah. So that's a good.
Before y'all go too far out, you were trying to say something, kind of got overshadowed. Sorry about that.
What's up? Sorry.
Mo?
Oh, you're talking to me?
Talked over, so I wanted to grab you when I could.
I was gonna say, to your point, what I think your point was that, fun as the movie is, they could have done a little bit more with the mystery of who the killer was. I mean, you do basically have Roy going like, "Hey, you guys remember me? I'm that ambulance driver dude from before, just making sure you didn't forget." Like, he practically pops in the movie to do that a couple of times, staring right into the camera and shit. So it's not the hugest revelation in the world. It would have been fun if they mixed it up a little bit more with that. But I think, we all basically are probably in agreement on that one from the sounds of it.
I mean, if it was all about just the kills, Vengeance, even if it's a fan film, would have been the best film in the freaking series. Jason took out an entire freaking chain gang in that one. I mean, you got that was like kills.
Unfortunately, that one will always be labeled and considered a fan film.
Well, let's also not forget about something like Scream, which as meta as it is, like, let's not forget that it has a whodunit story, that is consistently keeping you guessing, and it does not skimp out on the blood. It is especially the first one, they didn't skimp out on just how violent it was. Like, it was, and I think people often forget about, amidst the meta humor and stuff, people forget that it was a very bloody, gory film. But again, the story and the intricacies of the plot were such that it one complemented the other, but it was
entertaining on multiple levels.
Yes, and it didn't skimp on the fact that when it needed to be bloody and violent, it was, and to such a degree that you lingered on people that were just had so many wounds and that kind of stuff, and it's like it really makes you feel every stab. And could you have done that in this kind of movie? Sure. I mean, it would have perhaps not been what we know Friday the 13th to be, for better or worse, but I'm with everyone. Like, I feel like potential wise there's room to satisfy all these things and still make it a movie that checks off all the boxes.
So, anybody want to talk about any other plot points before I start rocking us towards the ending points? I'm not going to hit the last fight in the last part of that just yet, but everything in between, so we can. I just want to make sure we have time for the second one as well. But does anyone have anything else they want to discuss about those plot points from the beginning to that? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Killing. Once you get the killing started, it's going to kill. But
there's not really plot to speak of per se.
Yeah. Right.
when you get the final fight between Jason, Tommy, our final girl, and our kid, and they all play about an equal point in trying to take Jason down, which to me, I was like, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but in that fight, I was like, they were setting Tommy up as a badass. And Tommy did jack and shit throughout that entire fight.
It's checked out immediately. Sorry, my niece ran in here. I didn't have anything to add previously, though. Yeah, that was a huge disappointment to the movie for me then and now, that Tommy wasn't like... I thought they were going to throw down with some proper fisticuffs, you know? I thought there was going to be... thought he was going to Pele kick Jason's mask off or something. That's how we got it revealed who the killer was, or, you know.
Right.
It could have been so much better. I get it that he's, like, afraid, you know, but come on.
Yeah. And actually, I'll talk a little more on this when we get to the sixth one, but I know some of this was behind the scenes stuff where we've talked before about how they really didn't go into this series with a clear plan. and it never really got clear. But my understanding is they were trying to set Tommy up as the new Jason.
Yes.
And because of the way that they did such an about face that his character changes completely between the fifth and sixth movies.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of distracting all through the sixth movie.
And we'll talk about that also at the end, because I do want to bring that up. So, I mean, we get Jason's death, death, and reveal who it was and why it was. Like, oh, okay, it's the ambulance driver. Oh, that was his son that got killed by an axe-wielding maniac. Oh, okay, well, that's good.
And I don't even remember catching that in the movie. I remember...
You have to watch it multiple times at that point, because it's not something you would catch. They did not do a very good job of showing that. It was more of a, okay, let me watch that again to double check moment, I think. And I think that's what really PO'd people, is that they were hoping for Jason. And I'll admit, this dude was acting like Jason. He was acting pretty freaking invincible. I mean, walking around like taking hits. That dude got hit by a freaking bulldozer, and he was perfectly
bulldozer, and he got nicked in the shoulder with a chainsaw.
And yet, when the killer ended up being his mother in the first one, which is not Jason, why is this one so hated on?
Well, because it was 4 movies deep.
But why is Halloween 3?
We had nothing to stack it against with the first one, you know.
See, if Halloween 3 had been the first movie in the series, or even the second film in the series, you wouldn't have had the backlash. It's all about, we've already established Jason as a character. We've set up that we want, that people are like, yeah. It would be like pulling this stuff with Michael Myers on Halloween again. I mean, get to like the 4th or 5th Halloween movie, and it don't have Michael Myers in it. People just throw a revolt. You know, it's people love their horror monsters to be that same thing.
Well, it's separate rant here, but I think it needs to be said that most fans in most fandoms that I can think of tend to be really fucking dumb.
Yeah.
And if not fucking dumb, then they tend to be extremely inflexible to the point where they can't conceive of anything different. And it's like, well, if you're the smart guy, then go make your own fucking franchise, dickhead. To put it mildly. But it's
for kids.
Yeah, well, it just that whole attitude just pisses me off, because it's like, if you're so smart, you should make your own franchise, and then you can make it exactly how you want, which, to be fair, a lot of people have done, their own fan films and stuff, which good for them. But it's more so that, you need to understand the realities of what it takes to actually make a movie on that scale, and,
make a good movie, too.
Yeah, and let alone making a good movie, not just a movie, which, and generally most people that make a movie go into it expecting to make a good movie, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But it's just such that I feel like people that like to criticize movies, they don't really know what all goes into actually making them on that kind of level. And it's to an absurd degree, because there's not liking a movie, but then there's thinking that you know more than the people that made it.
Well, true. I mean, I think there's something to be said about, established themes being the reason people are fans of a series, and then when you go and make a movie about haunted Halloween masks after like a perfect 1-2 punch of an established mask dude. I mean, that like this more akin to if they did a Batman movie, but it was really about Robin. A side character, something that at least exists in the Batman universe, right?
Oh man!
And then Halloween 3 is like if they did a Batman movie and it was about like fucking Swamp Thing or somebody like sort of.
Or actually,
he's a comic book character,
I don't know. Well, it's.
I tell you, if they had done that, if I went in to see a Batman movie and it was about freaking Damian Wayne, I'd be so pissed.
Well, it's the kind of person I'm thinking of is like there's this YouTube channel. I don't know the real guy's name, but there's a YouTube channel called Horror is Dead. And he's only made a few videos, but like there's one where he was ranting about the Halloween 2018 trailer, not even the full movie, but just he went off on all these tangents about all these horror franchises that like he'll make all kinds of bullshit arguments about like how could you destroy a narrative, like you're breaking the narrative, and what kind of fan do you think you are that you can do that? And I'm just like, fuck off, just make your own goddamn movie if you're so fucking smart.
Let's talk about the ending of this. This is, to me, one of the biggest cop-outs in the entire franchise. And so, this is only my opinion.
No, I
you
agree.
mean like the very end, or your reveal?
Because you get in the end, because you've already revealed like that, and then you're back in the hospital.
Yeah.
And, Tommy is, of course, getting all these visions and hallucinations of Jason, and, of course, in his drawer is the mask, which, why the hell they have that in the hospital with him?
Why would they give that to him?
But
that's a bad idea all the way around.
And the weapon, by the way. And so, they end up having it to where he basically becomes Jason. And you see this scene at the end where he's got the knife and he's getting ready to go after the final girl at the very end. Now, they retconned it in 6 saying it was only a dream. But this, to me, was a huge mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Because, to me, I thought it was a perfect setup. You had Tommy, I think the entire trilogy was set up for Tommy to be the next Jason. And then you end up basically saying, oh, well, the fans didn't like that. They want undead Jason. So I guess that's what we're going to do. But that was kind of sad because it's going to retcon this entire ending. Where you could have had the next movie where you've got Tommy Jarvis Jason. You already established him as a badass who is not such a badass, but can be a badass. And that would have still been really good. You had him established. You had him, he's not well. You got your next Michael Myers. This, to me, is the only other example I remember from recent ones is Halloween had that example, too, where they spent all that time setting up the sister to be the next Michael Myers, essentially, and did nothing with it.
Yeah.
It's just to me, you spent all that time set up, lost potential.
It's this one I think is much more of a lost potential than even the Halloween one was, because with that one, yeah, they did backpedal a bit, but the way in which they backpedaled in Halloween, well, end of Halloween 4 and then the rest of Halloween 5, the way in which they backpedaled, it was such that you could have said that it was Jamie Lloyd's kind of her like the connection that she had with her uncle. It was familially based, so whatever dark forces took him over all those years ago, we're trying to control her, and so you could say that it was her having succumbed to that briefly and having not hurt the person too badly to where she would die, but enough to cause an alarm, and so therefore it helps to thrust us into part 5 by saying that, now she's got to grapple with this thing. It's like, imagine if Luke Skywalker, if he had not like a full-blown fall to the dark side, but like getting a little too close for comfort. And, it's like actually, that's kind of what they try to do in The Rise of Skywalker. And it's like, well, that I think is a good idea as far as being able to give your protagonist kind of a wake-up call and be like, oh shit, I really can be as evil as the person I'm trying not to be. I have that potential inside of me. And again, had they gone all the way with it in here, like, you could get the sense of Tommy having succumbed to this same temptation or whatever, but again, it doesn't work as well because he's not connected to Jason in any kind of familial way. It's just that he happened to kind of kill Jason by becoming him in some way. But again, that's not made overly clear. I think you could have, if you wanted to backpedal, you could have made it work in the sense that this is like a massive wake-up call, but they don't really go all the way with it. But the seeds are definitely there, and in other words, I'll defend it with Halloween 5 easier than I will with this one.
Well, with that, anybody else who hasn't commented on that? How about you, Dustin or Mo or Forrest? What are your thoughts on that ending? Do y'all think it was good that they retconned it, or do you think they could have done something more with it?
I think I'm happy with the retcon.
Yeah, I'm good with it. I mean, it's I thought it was pretty whack. I like Undead Jason, so. I mean, I don't know that I want my dude humanized. I guess I would fall into like the category of the bloodlusting fan that I just want Jason swinging people in sleeping bags against trees and shit. And I like the vibe of it being one continuous like creature at this point forward, as opposed to just some angsty dude in a Halloween mask. I don't.
Well, that does get tested when we finally get to Jason Goes to Hell. That very much gets tested. So with that being said, why don't we move into special effects? I mean, the kills. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
They're pretty great. All the kills are really gory and nasty, and this has. I think, like we said at the beginning, this has some of the best kills in the franchise.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
I think my favorite is the Road Flare, personally.
That and the tourniquet, like the belt tourniquet, those two are like my favorites, hands down.
They worked a lot on the special effects for it, too, for those kills. I mean, they had to craft a bald spot in the one mannequin for the hatchet thing because the mannequin didn't have the bald spot. They're like, oh, this is probably going to be a problem.
I have to say that my favorite kill was the porta potty one, because he thought it was his girlfriend that was fucking with him, and it came out.
She was briefly.
Holy shit.
The fake out at the beginning.
Which implies that she's taken advantage of him in enchilada episodes in the past, and I like that.
Plus, it's a metal fucking porta potty. I mean, the porta potty that you mentioned, Jake, in one of the Friday the 13th films. That one was a wooden porta potty that was outside now back, whereas this one was made of that that thin metal that they used to put on porch balconies back in the 70s. So
Well, I love the fact when he took those shears, and you didn't have to be shown. That's the thing. Some of these they took advantage of the fact that you did not have to show. You just you got to actually just tell, and where they actually pushed, they would actually took those shears and you could hear that sound. You just go, ugh.
Yeah, that's all you need.
You didn't even need to see it.
Although apparently they cut quite a lot to make the censors happy.
I mean, one of the kills for the girl was dancing the robot. Basically, Jason was supposed to spear her up her crotch, which wouldn't play very well.
No.
How cannibal Holocaust of them.
They even showed that picture. That's one of the things we were watching, that Crystal Lake Memories, and we've kind of moved on to this section of it. And they showed the picture of her with like the bloody crotch from what was supposed to be the. It's like censors aren't going to go for that. Oh, I guess something else. So how about the music? I mean,
It's not by Manfredini this time, is it?
I don't know who did the music this time, but I don't pay as much attention as y'all do to the horror musics. On this next movie will be an exception to the rule, but this one I didn't have a lot of,
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of input on it. Like I said, I think in a previous one here, it all just kind of blends together into one general theme, unless they're putting popular music in there.
Was the sixth one the one that had the pretty solid 80s pop song at the end?
Probably.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, this one was
Henry Manfredini, which he did do the music for part 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's done most of them, hasn't he?
I'll say he's done a good portion of it.
Yeah, I just checked my vinyl and it was indeed Harry Manfredini.
Well, I think it was you, Dustin, or someone said last time that, there's some new cues added in or something, and different little tidbits here and there that are different. But I think it's kind of fairly uniform.
They didn't
for the most part.
Now there were some cool parts, like when that girl was dancing the robot to that song. That was a pretty kicking song right there. Apparently, she had just brought in what she brought in her own music for that.
And her own dance moves, I hope.
Not quite as memorable as Crispin Glover's, but
Nothing will ever beat that.
So, why don't we go through and talk favorite scenes, and then we're going to move on to 6. So, Forrest, what's your favorite scene in Friday the 13th Part 5?
I would probably say Debbie Sue Voorhees.
All right. just that's right there. How about you, Jake?
I concur.
Dave?
I would have to agree.
All right. Justin?
What, my favorite?
Yeah, favorite scene.
I think my favorite is probably when he beats the crap out of the hillbilly.
All right. That is awesome. I like that scene. He does that little temper tantrum afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, and he rides all the way home to mommy.
And gets one with a meat cleaver.
Yeah, he loses his head.
Yes, he does.
He hurt me, mommy.
How about you, Mo? What's your favorite scene?
Oh, geez. Probably the Tommy fight scenes and that tourniquet, face squish. He didn't quite crush it, but it was pretty brutal.
All right.
That's probably one of my favorite kills in the whole series, actually, because it seems excruciating,
I do like that. Now, I do admit, there is a part where you realize he's turning it the opposite way when you look at it. He's like, Titan? Oh, wait, no, the other way. How about you, Dane? What's your favorite scene?
I think I'm gonna go with the inciting incident for the story as a whole, which is the fact that our dear Axeman, he should have just said yes to the chocolate bar, and all of this wouldn't have happened.
Oh man, that was to me that was the most brutal feeling kill in the entire movie.
Yeah, well, it's the least elaborate, and yet
Yeah.
because of that, because it just happens so senselessly and so randomly, you feel it, and because it's not Jason, you feel it a little bit more because you're like, what the fuck? Why did this guy snap that badly over something so small? But again, it's like, we all have the potential to be Jason inside.
You have that anger.
Yes. All because of a fucking chocolate bar.
Well, that kid, in defense, that kid was annoying as hell.
Oh, God, yes.
Nowhere near as annoying as the guy in 3.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Similar pathology, but you're right.
I think that it was a basic, same concept. But with that being said, of course, my favorite's the one where she's dancing the robot. I don't know why. The song is rocking, and you got a brutal kill that falls right after that. It's just all best of all worlds.
But it's trivia. that actress, I'm trying to remember her name. It was
Tiffany F.
Yeah, Tiffany. Tiffany. Tiffany Helm. Yeah.
Helm.
Her real life mother was Brooke Bundy, who starred in who played Patricia Arquette's mother in Nightmare on Elm Street 3. So that family's got so before there was Freddy versus Jason, like this family of actors had history with both franchises.
A lot of hard.
That's pretty cool. She was in Freddy's Nightmares in one episode too, so as Waitress Mary. So
Underappreciated series, Freddy's Nightmares. So, with that being said, we're gonna move. Did I get everybody? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So many people were talking about like the assets. I guess is their favorite assets. So we're gonna go to part 6. I'm gonna just put on the trailer, give you all a little extra entertainment here. So we're gonna turn the sound on this time. Because y'all people want sound with your trailers, and I mean, who wants?
I can't imagine why.
A bunch of entitled bastards.
This is between me and Jason. Jason belongs in hell, and I'm gonna see he gets there.
what? Ilya F.
Jason's alive. We dug up his body. You gotta do something.
No one in Forest Green wants to be reminded of what that maniac did here. That's why we changed the name. People want to forget this was Crystal Lake.
Just because our parents keep telling us that Jason was only a legend doesn't mean it wasn't true. What if he did come back here? Looking for the camp counselor that caused him to drown his mother.
We better turn around.
Why?
Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
Darn, August 1st. We must have. I missed it.
Was that the official trailer, or
No,
was
that
that
was a
like?
fan-made no, that's a fan-made trailer.
I was gonna say it was too good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
slickly
I think
edited.
it
It was very
was.
slickly edited.
Well, with that being said, though, we are back for Friday 13th Part 6.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not. Did it stop sharing for everybody?
Jason lives.
It did.
It's green screen.
There
we go.
So, y'all probably have different opinions about this, but of course, before we get to starting, what's the kill count for 6?
So the kill count, the last one was 21, and part 6 has 18. Which, generally speaking, my rule of thumb has been the fewer kills, the better the movie, and the more kills, the more desperate the movie, story-wise. Generally speaking, that's been my rule of thumb, but it seems like the more that the series goes on, that theory doesn't necessarily hold up. Now, granted, the ones that have the most kills in them tend to be the ones that aren't received as well, but the later sequels, where the series really starts to take shape, they still have a pretty high kill count, all things considered.
So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start with first impressions. So we'll start with Jake. I'm guessing this is your first time seeing Part 6.
How'd you guess?
No, this is the one you've watched 50 times, right?
No, just the once.
Just the one.
And so this one, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there was a little bit of tonal whiplash with the, well, Tommy's back, but this is not the same dude, and not just a different actor. I mean, this is not the same Tommy. This guy seems a little paranoid, but certainly the police make him out to be. But he is not nearly as unhinged as the one, and the other one clearly seemed to be. I guess you could say, my read on it, Brandon, you can tell us if this is even remotely accurate, but my read on is the fifth one is that he's kind of got like pretty severe PTSD or something along those lines. And in this one, it's more like a mild case at best. But, so there's that distracting bit. I also had a mixed reaction to the new characters. The cop was just a dick, I thought, for no real reason other than to be someone to thwart Tommy. But his daughter was pretty cute and definitely had a thing for Tommy. Unfortunately, one of the other girls who was really cute had a very brutal end, and that didn't make me very happy. Overall, I thought this one was at least a slight step up. I feel like I got more out of it than most of the others. Still not a classic by any means, though. But I think I ended up rating this as maybe the second or third of the series so far.
What about you, Dave? Is this your first time seeing Part 6?
Oh no, this is probably one of the ones that I have watched and rewatched in the franchise, and I guess the one go-to one that I go and rewatch next to Jason X, which is probably my second favorite out of the series. As far as darkness goes to the series, because a lot of the films are campy up until I mean, the first one definitely dark, and then it like you have the five in between that are all campy, all pretty good with the kills, and you get to this one and damn, okay. I guess the negative thing that I can say about this film is they start out with a couple of guys digging up Jason, just like they did in the previous one, and they kind of did the same fucking beginning. You know, the guys were doing the digging up, and you know, and ultimately it comes down to, okay, bam, Jason comes back by lightning. You know, and that's kind of what starts the whole movie, the reanimated version of Jason, where he will not die. This is just a classic film in the franchise, because you have not only the kills of Jason, you have the girl, you have the car, and you have his classic stance on top of that RV, which is dominating the screen. I mean, when it comes, I mean, you don't expect him to tower over you. And I saw this film in the theater, so
definitely a thumbs up on your end for your first impression. How about you, Forrest? First impression? I'm pretty sure it wasn't your first time with it.
No. And I've also seen it in the theater too. I would definitely regard this as I would probably put this in the upper echelon of Friday the 13th movies. Like probably I would probably say maybe at least top 5, at least among the top 5. And I definitely like the atmosphere in this one. It's got a very classic horror atmosphere with like the wind and the leaves blowing and the thunder and lightning. I definitely, I like the I love how it's a lot more self-aware. They kind of realize that they've picked up on all they're self-aware about the tropes of these movies, and kind of try to subvert expectations a little bit, kind of like the second one. Also, I love Alice Cooper. I love the soundtrack by Alice Cooper. This is definitely the period of time in the 80s when a lot of horror movies were starting to incorporate more rock music into soundtracks, rock and metal music, which kind of gave it a kick. It definitely gave life to the gave a new life to the movie. Made a lot. Oh God, what was I'm just trying to think of what else. There was just one more thing that I was thinking of that was just me that really stood out to me. It was.
Well, he'll come back to you. If it does, just let us know. We'll
sure.
In there. How about you, Dustin? I'm pretty sure it's not your first time either.
Oh, definitely not. I first saw this in my big marathon of Friday the 13th movies in 2012. And this is definitely one of the best ones, in my opinion, as well. It has a real, it has a Universal Monsters kind of feel to it.
Exactly.
Which was intentional by Tom McLaughlin.
Oh yeah.
He wanted it to be more of a romp, I guess, for lack of a better term. And so he filmed it deliberately like that. Like Adam Green from the Movie Crypt podcast has said that this is the one that you might let your kids watch, because it's very palatable. And if you're trying to introduce somebody to this series, I think this is probably the best one to start with.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take itself too seriously, and the kills aren't as nasty as they are in some of the other entries.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Mo? Is this your first time seeing Part 6?
Oh, not at all. This is one of my. This is actually, if I had to pick any more, probably my favorite in the whole franchise. There, it's just solid fun. It's like the first movie where it feels like Jason's a friggin' icon. He's a cool dude with a hockey mask or whatever for a couple of movies before that, but this is that first time where it does have like a classic monster vibe to it, because they sort of turned him into that. He's got the old Frankenstein style revival and shit, and it's just he's obviously way more powerful. This is where you start seeing him just roll over motherfuckers, and it's just a good time. But like Dustin said, those are great qualities of the movie as well. It's probably the funnest of the movies to watch, I think, just in a general kind of way, because you can watch it with like your little cousin or something and not screw him up too bad. So.
Or watch it with your 8-year-old nephew and not have his mother yelling at you because there's gratuitous nudity.
Right. It's like the most well-rounded of them, I would say, easily, because it still hits a lot of creepy levels of atmosphere too, which, for being honest, it's probably the first movie to properly, I think, try as hard to do that, and that definitely comes from, I'm assuming, that dude's affinity for Universal monsters, so it's pretty cool.
So, Dane, was this your first time checking out this film?
It was not. This is by far my favorite of the series, and I would argue that it's the only singular installment in this whole series that really works as its own movie from beginning to end. I mean, you could say that about maybe the first or second one, but this appeal of this series as a whole, I think generally the people that really love the series, they tend to enjoy it from the perspective of a series rather than as a singular movie, and then the rest are kind of add-ons, like you do with, say, Halloween. The Halloween people really love the first one, and then everything else is additional. But Friday the 13th, for better or worse, the movies themselves, they aren't really all that great in and of themselves, as far as singular experiences, where you can clearly say, yes, this has a definite, beginning, middle, and end, solid arc, solid everything, like that, on a structural level, and that's why they just work best with more movies to support them. But the notable exception, I think, is this one, because I feel like if you were to just pluck any one of the movies out and say, that this is kind of the feel of this series, this is what it does well, this is, a good feel, solid story, solid structure, good meta humor that doesn't feel too cheeky or too in your face or anything. I think that this hits all those boxes, plus great music, great iconic moments, and I, particularly being a fan of the Universal monster movies myself, I mean, those to me, when I think of monster movies or horror or whatever, my mind immediately goes there, because those are the ones that I watched as a kid. And the fact that this has such an affinity for that era of movie making, up to and including the fact that Tom McLaughlin specifically shot it in such a way that if you were to turn the color settings off and just make it black and white, that it would look like it was meant to be shot that way. I think that really sets it apart from the rest. So it does a good job of paying homage to its classic monster pedigree, while also poking fun at some of the elements of the series that were either heavily criticized, or things that just don't really make a lot of sense, or things that, if they could get a clever editing joke in there, then they could, does he think I'm a fart head? Yay! That whole thing, I was like, that's great, that's good comedic editing there. And it's one of those things where, for me, it hits the balance just right in every area, and I think that it's the one that Tommy feels like he's working the best as a character out of all of them. The actor who played him, I think he does the best job out of all the actors who played Tommy. And I think that I like the sheriff guy, who was an asshole, but it's like you needed a human, non-Jason antagonist to kind of help propel our hero forward. And just for me, I think it works very solidly as a story for the kind of movie it is. And I really like the humor that's in there. It's just meta enough, but it's not obnoxious, and it's not really in the level of spoof or anything. And it's just that right blend, and it's such that if you didn't really catch it, that the story still works. Like, for example, when Jason emerges from the grave, he puts on his mask, and it's so awesome. Like, that's the perfect reveal for Jason.
That was
like
good. That was a good moment.
well, that
Yeah.
sums up exactly what he's about, just purely visually. And then they punch in on his eye, and then you see a James Bond spoof.
Oh,
but it's not really a perfect one, and I mean that as a compliment, because it's like if you had never seen a James Bond movie in your life, it would still work. And that's how you do meta humor well. Is that, the people that get it will get it, and they'll appreciate it on that level. But if you've never seen a James Bond movie or a whatever that they're trying to reference, then it still works. Like, the reference is not the joke. The joke is the joke, or the homage is the homage, but the story still works.
You know, it's odd with this poster. It looks like the grave is the back of a chair that I have behind me.
Well, it does kind of line up perfectly that way, doesn't it?
Rest in peace, Brandon.
Might if I go too late, I probably will. But I'll go ahead and I'll. My first time was, again, I marathoned them after getting that Crystal Lake set for the first time. Now, I will say this. The Sixth movie was the first time I watched this and said to myself, okay, that's a Friday the 13th film. Because every one of them before that kind of like threw me for a slight loop when it came to my expectations. The first one definitely threw me a curveball because I wasn't expecting that entirely. And a lot of the others also did that. But this one is the first one that checked every box of everything that I expected from a Friday the 13th film before watching any Friday the 13th films.
Yeah.
And that has its place. I also was a huge fan of the soundtrack long before I saw the movie. I mean, one can actually see it on, it's hard to see it there. Darn it, doesn't want to go. Well, let me turn this off so I can actually show it.
The mystery of the disappearing album.
Yeah, I know. It's like, boom, it doesn't want to talk to me.
Well, you're holding up the Life and Crimes of Alice Cooper, the 1999 box set.
Exactly. I'm going to take that out. Okay, there it goes. Yeah, That is just one of them. I have a lot of other albums. But, I mean, Jake could actually attest I was a huge Alice Cooper fan back in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember listening to a lot of those, like Teenage Frankenstein, and of course, the one that everybody knows from the movie, He's Back, the man behind the mask. You know.
I love it.
That you have is the only one that has Hard Rock Summer on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that should be like, I mean, we all the themes of the series, like, they tend to be it's kind of variations on that same theme, but then in much the way that you're describing, you could make the argument that this is Jason fully realized in every department, musically, story-wise, kills, protagonist, antagonist, humor, tone, style, homages. It seems like it's like, okay, we had 5 movies to kind of figure out what the fuck this series is, where we're going, who this character is, what he's all about, all this stuff. And now we've kind of gone in a bunch of different paths and deviations and stuff. Now we can really, buckle down and kick some ass and make a movie that is very assured of itself and can just take you on a ride that also pays homage to all the films that, were it not for them, Jason wouldn't be possible.
So, with that, I mean, again, as I say, though, it's not my favorite of the film, like for many of y'all. It is the first film that I truly felt was doing what I thought this thing was going to do the whole time. There were no curveballs. All expectations were met. It was a by the book, by the numbers slasher film, as I thought all of them were supposed to be, and I was definitely proven wrong. So we're going to, I guess we'll go through the graveyard scene. As Dave said, it's kind of a rehash, so you could say that Tommy had seen into the future and saw himself digging up the grave and resuscitating Jason again.
Or you could say that honestly, you could have probably written part 5 out of the whole thing. You know, just go straight from part 4 to part 6, and what have you really missed? Not a whole lot in terms of the main story.
And it would have definitely helped with the character development, as Jake had pointed out earlier. Tommy is not just a different actor, but yeah, he does flip around a lot personality-wise. A lot apparently must have happened in between 5 and 6.
Actually, I was very amused. I was reading through this. The actor that played him, I think it was John Shepherd that played him in the 5th movie.
John Shepherd.
Apparently found religion between the 2 movies, which I wonder exactly what it was about the movie that made him do that. But I was looking at his career. He did continue acting right up until about 2004. Lately, he's been a producer. And some of the producers, some of the things he did are things like the Ultimate Gift, which, you know, that's a very, very different film tonally from this one.
He should go and act in a bunch of Pureflix movies and stuff.
Right.
That's totally where he belongs.
He could do it.
He totally could do it.
Between him and
Matthews is a lot better, I think.
Yeah.
This was a hell of a year for him too. Like, he was also in Return of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same year, right?
No, Return of the Living Dead was 85, and also that movie had Tom Matthews, who was in this movie, and then it also co-starred Miguel Nunez Jr., who was Demon in Part 5.
It did.
Yeah, so there were 2 Friday the 13th people in Return of the Living Dead.
Yep.
So what did y'all think of the entirety of the scene? I always think of Tommy as an ex machina basic character, because he brings everything to bear.
Well, I think this version of Tommy, he feels like a fully realized character now, because he has had some trauma having dealt with Jason in the past, but he is not. He's still proactive. He's still committed to stopping him, and it was. In classical Greek tragedy fashion, it was his hubris that brings about his own worst fate, except that it was such that, you know, it wasn't like something so painfully obvious that, you know, people would have been like, oh, you know, you should never have done that. How could you, you dumb shit? You know, it was such that it was kind of, you know, literally like the gods, you know, send the monster down for him having disturbed the grave and all that stuff. But I think that this actor whose name is Tom Matthews, I think he plays Tommy with the most degree of conviction, but also with some vulnerabilities that aren't too infuriating or anything. Like, he's very believable in he's tangled with Jason before. He knows what the other people don't know, and, you know, I think that he really imbues this character with conviction and personality that has been sorely lacking up to now. And that's not to take anything away from Corey Feldman, because at that point he's still a kid and he's rough. He's more or less a blank slate, or a blanker slate relative to who he becomes. And so that's why, like, I feel like he really, to me, like, this is the kind of person that I would want this series to be about. And, you know, I just would have wanted them to go all the way with it, of course. But given how good his character is fleshed out just through this performance, not even really in terms of what's necessarily there on the screen, or on the page rather, because I imagine that he probably had to do a lot of just making the character his own without having necessarily had a whole lot to work with on the page relative to what any other actor would have gotten. But that also speaks to his ability to really derive every ounce of meaning and every possible potential from this character. So that automatically we have a protagonist that we really care about, because we get the sense that he knows what he's talking about, he believes what he's saying, and therefore we should believe it too. It's the old Christopher Walken quote about acting, which is that the audience doesn't have to necessarily know what you're talking about. They just have to know that you know what you're talking about. Right. And he definitely does that to a brilliant degree.
And of course, for our group, I mentioned before how fun it is, like, familiar faces and all that. And of course, he got this gig from Return of the Living Dead, which we covered, a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was, and he was a very different role in that one.
Very different.
Ready?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, what's up?
And I look at Retconix Machina there as he would have been a good. He's actually, I feel like I agree with this. If 5 was taken out, and I'm starting, and really, if you look at 6 is presented with the whole concept of don't even remember 5. 5 was not real. It didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Basically, you really could go directly from 4 to 6 mm-hmm. and feel like you feel a little bit less shell shock.
Exactly.
From the whole deal. No, this is really what happened with Tommy after he mm-hmm. grew up, instead of this one in the beginning. And again, I'm wondering if that was really what they thought, is that basically let's just forget about 5 and pretend this is the sequel to 4. This is the real 5.
Well, if you do that, it's a lot smoother, I think. Mm-hmm. Like, if I were to go back and do, like, either a fan edit or how some people, they went back and they did their own, this is before 7, 8, and 9, but they did their own viewing order for the Star Wars films. Like, I've seen a viewing order that basically ignores episode 1, and you go 4, 5, 2, 3, 6. It's like, if I were to do that, it's like you could easily throw out 5 and not really miss all that much. And so it's definitely doable. And you do get less whiplash that way.
So, for a moment when you said 5, I was thinking, what's Star Wars 5? But that's Empire Strikes Back.
No, you go 4, 5, 2, 3, 6, and that was before 7, 8, and 9 existed.
Which coincidentally is called Machete Order.
Yeah.
Well, so of course, Jason's brought back. We've already gone over this, the whole lightning the whole Frankenstein angle and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. He's brought back in a supernatural way, and he starts, of course, doing his thing as he does, as you do, and has his first weapon given to him by Tommy, who had plunged it in his chest and helped revive him in the first place.
Wasn't that nice of him?
It was.
Which, again, great, kind of poetic justice / irony there.
So, with that, he goes on his killing spree. I mean, that as you do. And while Tommy's trying to convince the sheriff and everybody else, I mean, the daughter's all good about it, but the sheriff's like, no, that's done. We're not bringing it back again. Mm. We are opening the beaches, darn it. And getting it taken care of. But dropping him off at the edge of town, Rambo style, and said, we don't want you filthy vagrants in our town, and running off. But it's okay, because he decides he's going to ride with her, hide in her crotch, and try and dodge the police as he tries to warn people about Jason. Because in the old side of Camp Blood, we have another camp, and this time we actually have campers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, can you believe that it took us 6 movies to get to that point?
Get actual camp.
Actually, that was the point that I was trying to think of, was that this is the only movie in the franchise where it's a fully operational camp.
I know. It's like, well, and again, that's like, seriously, couldn't they have just started the series here? Because all the stuff that they were doing before that felt like, well, experimentation, or like we think we can, or we don't know what the fuck we're doing. We're just gonna try to make something. Which, again, I think that part of the love that people have for the series is that, it's the kind of let's get our friends together, go out and make a movie. So they like that kind of feel to it. But like as far as having a solidly constructed story from the get-go, I'm like, you could easily just start it here and you've pretty much got everything you need. You don't necessarily have the backstory outside of what we are told again and again with each movie. But point being, you've got enough to go on, because Jason and Freddy and, Michael Myers and stuff, they became the next generation's equivalent of the Universal monsters in terms of their fandoms and their, schoolyard, like who would win kind of contests.
Oh, yeah.
And that being said, so knowing that, you're able to really, you got all the ingredients together, throw them all into one pot and really just have fun with every aspect of your central premise, and that seems to be what they were doing. And as far as I'm concerned, I think it pays off the best out of all of them.
You're about to say something, Dustin?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Well, in any case, with that being said, we go through...
Dane already covered it.
We get through the kills pretty... Well, we just do a lot of kills. We establish, the people are trying to keep the kids safe. Tommy's still trying to get people warned. They're trying to dodge the cops. Jason's going in, overturning mobile homes, wrecking people's lives when they're just trying to have a good time together. And, he was going to last to the end of the song, darn it. But he did, because it got cut off prematurely.
All he wants to hear is Alice Cooper.
Yep, and actually, the actor he stabbed in the head is John Travolta's real life nephew.
Wonder if any diehard fans are out there taking that challenge on, though. Last until the end of that song.
Much like with all these previous films, the plot isn't exactly all that complex. I mean, the only major complexity is with Tommy's obsession that Jason can only be, he was birthed out of the water of the lake, and he can only be taken out by the water of the lake.
Well, yeah, it's, the classical, birth, rebirth, death, kind of cyclical thing.
But otherwise, it's just basically a big slaughter fest until they can get him out into the lake, and then the final battles, of course, all happen at Camp Blood as you end. So, are there any major plot points that y'all wanted to discuss throughout the plot, throughout this movie?
A lot of vignettes in classical Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
In classical Friday the 13th fashion, a lot of vignettes. One that stuck out to me in particular was the hunters, and the one part where the guy gets his bloody face, print on the trunk, and it has the smiley face, which I thought was funny.
Oh, the paintball dudes.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. You got that triple decapitation right there, too.
Oh, yeah.
That's classic shit. I don't know. I mean, I like the whole vibe of the movie just in general, man. How he's like rolling into town, telling them some crazy shit. They don't want any of it. They try to Rambo his ass, and then he gets in with like the sheriff's daughter. Just all good stuff,
Shit.
Well, and also, we need to also give a special shout out to the fact that out of all of them, thus far anyway, this one has probably the best cinematography out of all of them, because of having specifically tried to construct it to where it would look good in black and white, which of course, me being the big black and white guy, I'm like, absolutely, more of that, please. But also on top of that, I'm just thinking of overall shot composition, and you've got forward motion from the camera as Jason emerges from having crouched to rising up, so you've got rising action, you've got him putting the mask on and then turning around, the lightning strikes, it's very dramatic, a lot of layers of motion from the actor and the camera to create that dynamic shot. And then you've got, everything on the RV, you've got just a lot of shots that really let you know that they actually knew how to make a movie with this one. And again, it's after having had 5 movies of just kind of fucking around and seeing what works and what doesn't, it's like with this one, you got the sense that people here, they really knew how to make a movie, and they knew just basic cinematic theory and, that kind of stuff. So you throw all these things together, and you can make not only a really fun movie that is paying homage to the classics, but also makes fun of itself in just the right amount of ways. But also just one that really knows how to create those visually arresting images that will stick in the viewer's brains. And this is one of the best received installments in the series, critically.
You gotta wonder how Rambo would have done if he had been running around with the sheriff's daughter.
It's a good, or if you put him against Jason, because they're both bullet sponges in their own way.
What's sad is that I really hate that, because one of the cool things about the Mortal Kombat franchise over the last 3 games has been the additions. Because you had Freddy in 9, and you have Jason in 10. It's sad that Rambo's... You see, you've got it all, like, if you could get them all together, then you're missing out on Freddy versus Jason. And we're definitely missing out on Rambo versus Jason over there.
Yeah, that would be cool.
But
and versus Alien, I think, because don't they have the Xenomorph in there?
Yeah, in 10 they have the Xenomorph. But you can do Alien versus Predator in that one, because they do have the Predator as well.
Right. Were they in talks?
Rambo versus Predator would be dope. Basically, Rambo versus everyone equals awesome, I think.
Or what about if you did Jason versus the Toxic Avenger?
What was it that you were saying, Forrest?
Oh, I said, isn't there talk right now? Aren't there talks to bring Rambo into the next Mortal Kombat game?
Oh yeah, he's in 11. I don't know about I don't know about 12, but he is in the newest DLC. Of course, I'm waiting until it all comes out eventually, so I can just get the whole thing eventually. But that might be another couple of years yet. So, with that being said, we have a whole bunch of fun stuff with the plot, but then they get that final thing where they just wrap that chain around Jason to sink him in the lake. That's a heck of a fight.
By far the most practical solution of any of the movies,
Yeah, well, I mean, he already moves like he's got feet of lead anyway, so why not make use of it?
So, I mean, that's a big fight. I mean, surrounded in fire. They take a motorboat to his. They motorboat him.
Yeah,
but not in a good way.
Well, yeah, if young Jason
in a good way.
If young Jason had got some motorboating, then maybe he wouldn't be so vengeful.
Yeah.
So Jason was taken out.
That's the thing. They put him out in a rowboat. They should have put that motor in it.
Yeah, why not?
Well, it cut that bit off his mask so we could see like his teeth and shit all gnarly in the next movie, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Part 7 probably has my favorite Jason design, and it takes its ending to get him there.
I do like how they take vengeance and they basically make it so it can just start right after Part 6 and have him just emerge from the lake after being in that watery prison. So it is kind of cool that you can see some of those things when you look back on this and you're like, oh yeah, they did do that at the end of Part 6.
Well, and you know, psychics aside and shit, like it is the most practical solution. Like, look, there's that lake that's famous for having the Jason statue at the bottom. People boat and swim and shit and fish, and no one cares. Like, even if it was real, he's way down there, and the chances of him ever coming up are very slim. You know, so I imagine they just put some buoys, like submerged buoys, so people know, like, don't go down there. He might grab at you. It just become a part of everyday life. Like, yeah, Jason's in the lake.
On your left, you'll see Jason. Don't get too close, kids.
After so many years, he starts getting bored and just waving up to him.
Yeah, why not?
Like Jake said, it's for kids.
Mm-hmm.
For kids.
Well, isn't that interesting how, like, you know, we joke about that, but in the early days of the MPAA and all of the inconsistencies thereof, and on the lack of a PG-13 for most of the 80s, you know, that sort of thing, how you would, and also just not knowing really how to market a film in such a way that you can, you know, just because, like, I'm thinking a lot of R-rated movies had toys aimed at kids, and it's like, well, only in the 80s could you have had that. And, you know, so then you got all of these movies that kids really shouldn't have been seeing, and yet they did, and they, you know, became a part of their lives and all that kind of stuff. And it's just interesting how then the 90s came along, and it was, you know, everything that's remotely violent, even if it is aimed at kids, is destroying the soul of America. We must censor it because we're parents.
I kind of feel like the whole R-rated toys market to kids was kicked into. I mean, it started in the 80s, but I think it really kicked into high gear in the 90s with Aliens, Predator, Terminator, The Toxic Avenger,
Tales from the Crypt.
Well, I guess that was like. Well, I guess that was like late 80s, bleeding into the 90s, but. You know, point being that I find that just interesting that you had all of that, and then you had such a, you know, just the 90s was all about parents freaking out over everything and anything. You know, that kind of got put a stop to real quick.
You see, I don't think it was just that time. I think really the more exceptional was in the late 90s to early 2000s when it stopped. Because stuff like that had been going around since even the 40s and 50s, because you had the horror magazines that were quite gory. You had all this stuff, and kids were looking at that stuff, and parents were not like, some of them would freak out, but they weren't like over freaking out, not like in the 90s and 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
It was, you know, that sort of thing.
Fangoria.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, the parents did freak out a bit, like in the 50s with, thanks to Friedrich Wertham having, you know, gotten horror comics, like the EC horror comics, having gotten those ended because of his book Seduction of the Innocent. Yep. And, you know, so I mean, I would slightly dispute that, but as far as like a homegrown kind of moral panic and stuff, it definitely was like came to full fruition in the 90s. There was definitely a moral panic insofar as like Dungeons and Dragons was concerned, but I'm thinking, you know, like not so much that it stopped the marketing of toys aimed at kids based on R-rated movies.
Well,
dude, Jason's pretty lovable in this one, though. You know, there's that part where he like checks in on the children and he doesn't hurt any of them. So I would argue, much like Gamera, Jason is a friend to all children. You know?
Well, you could definitely make that argument easier in this one than you could in the other ones.
He does that head tilt thing too, like a little puppy dog,
which was lifted from Michael Myers. Which was lifted from Michael Myers, yeah. And actually, Michael Myers for the slasher world, but then also for being 80s and everything. It was what's his face, Warwick Davis playing Wicket the Ewok. He did the head tilt thing because his dog did that whenever he was curious about something, and that made sense for an Ewok to do. So it's tying it all together.
So
yeah, they should have Warwick play the Jason in Part 5. That'd have been awesome.
Yeah. well, he played the Leprechaun.
Yep.
Right.
Does anyone have anything else that they want to say about the movie before we start getting into special effects and stuff?
I just think all around that 6 has definitely a darker feel to it. I mean, as far as Friday the 13th films, I mean, it pretty much blew the other films out of the park, I think, as far as Jason films go. And it kind of gave birth to what Jason really became in the sense of the 90s mind set that we think of him in, you know.
Yeah. And it kind of paved the path. It did pave the path for meta horror that would become more prevalent in the 90s.
Yeah, thanks to Scream and everything, which I really love the Scream movies insofar as I love the characters, I love the mystery aspects, and the meta humor can be quite amusing. I do think it got kind of too cheeky for its own good in some spots and a little too self-aware, but then you have something like this which helped to pave the way for that kind of third wall breaking horror, but this one actually does it more subtly, and the kinds of things that the characters say don't really feel too far out of the realm of what those characters could really be saying in that situation. And so I think that's a good example. That's part of what I really love about the film, on top of everything else. It teaches people screenwriters, it teaches them how to do meta humor in a subtle fashion that still hits its mark, but it doesn't overstay its welcome, basically.
So, well, with that, why don't we go ahead down to special features, special effects. Again, see, I would be willing to go at odds with Dave a little bit on the dark aspect of it. I actually considered this one not campier, but lighter tone, as far as it's more of a horror action film than a horror film to me. Whereas I would consider the first 2 films to be a far more horror tone than horror action. I look at this one in more of a similar vein to, I was thinking about horror action not too long ago myself when it comes to like films, but I can't think of the film series, and I was thinking of where the series was getting more about, Resident Evil. The Resident Evil movies with Mila Jovovich, good example. It's a similar concept. It started out trying to be a little bit more horror, but that one hit the fan very quickly. So it became basically just a big bash fest action film with some horror.
I don't know. I think of an action film as being like stuff with guns and martial arts and things of that nature.
Yeah, they do hit. I mean, there is like the dude who shoots Jason a comical amount of times, the cop with the shotgun.
Yeah.
So there's your guns there, but they do have like a car chase, and there's a large vehicle stunt with the Winnebago there. And I think this is the first one that has a.
It's more of the spectacle side of things.
Yeah, I think this is the first one with fire in it too.
Yep.
You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but they weren't setting dudes on fire in previous movies, and they set Jason on fire at the end for a minute. So
getting into special effects here, Jason, the guy who played Jason, he has even said that this was the film that he got burned on. He actually really got some third-degree burns on his skin when he was set on fire.
C.J. Graham? C.J. Graham wasn't set on fire in this one, was he?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, briefly. I don't know if it was him or someone else, but at the end, and there's definitely a partial like body burn at the end of this, because he sets the lake on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he goes on fire like right with that.
Yeah, and Jason catches him on fire for a minute there. So someone got lit on fire, and the Jason get up for a minute. Not completely like Kane Hodder style. That's pretty nuts, but
to me, I think that it became more successful, or that it became more of this because it stopped trying to be Halloween. It stopped trying to be something it wasn't, it looked at that and said, we are not a straight-out horror film. We are a balls to the walls, fest film. We are not just, there. That's the thing is,
They're like, we're making a monster movie.
yeah, we're making a monster movie. We're not making a straight out like scare movie. We're making an actual monster movie, and that's where I think this is. I can't, because I don't consider a lot of some of those like monster films to necessarily be even scary by the purpose. It was the spectacle of it all. That's what people went in there for. They went in for the kills. Kids are cheering for it. They're not like hiding under the bed because he's killing these people.
Yeah. And the monster films, especially in the 40s, once they started doing the House of Frankenstein or House of Dracula or whatever, those were kind of the superhero films of their day insofar as they had a shared universe and it was all about getting these characters together, watching them go, it makes perfect sense, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think,
it's not
the line
bad thing. I'd say
well, they're very the ties between those monster characters, whether it's Universal or whether it's the Bronze Age slashers or whatever, they have the same kind of fandoms, the same series of schoolyard debates and stuff as superheroes do today.
I mean, a lot of those monster movies, the theology, as y'all put it out, like there with this group, you had your own Universal Monsters group, and sadly they all should have been with the same. It would have been really awesome at that point to see them interact like those, because you had Freddy and Jason Michael Myers technically at the beginning, then Freddy and Jason, and then you had your later comers like Chucky as they went through. And each of them started out trying to be a lot scarier than they ended up being towards the end or towards the middle even of their franchises. I mean, shoot, look at Freddy. Freddy is a good example of that. First Nightmare on Elm Street film had a lot of good scariness to it. It was creepy. It was freaky. But as you get to like 4 and 5, those movies aren't scary. Matter of fact, people were dressing up as Freddy Krueger because of that. And that's the thing. That's when you get to the tone where your kids could dress up at them because they're having fun with them. It's not scaring the kids. These aren't meant to scare. They're meant to you're supposed to cheer them on as they're going around and start slaughtering people. It's the monster.
Yeah.
Reckon that.
Well, and that's I think part of what is lost on a lot of actually no, it's not, never mind, I take that back. I was going to say that was lost on modern horror films, but actually I don't think it is now that I think about it. Like, people dress up as Jigsaw or Billy the Puppet, or they dress up as Annabelle, or there are all kinds of people that they might dress up as today, but it definitely takes on a different feel, I guess, is more what I was trying to get at. It takes on a different feel today than it would, just because there is much more of a comic book convention culture these days that's more mainstream, to where people can kind of keep those schoolyard debates, keep that spirit alive in some ways. And you might say perhaps to an insane degree, to where they start throwing fits when they're 30 and 40-year-old men, but it's, that's a whole other discussion. But point being that those same fandoms still exist, surrounded or centered by horror films.
So with that being said, let's go on to special effects. There were definitely special effects in this film. It was not spent in the goriness of the kills like in a lot of the previous. It was more spent in, the spectacle of it. The blowing things up, the fire, the overturned Winnebago.
Well, I think they definitely had a big budget to afford a real cameraman.
Mm-hmm. That helps.
So that definitely helps to have different angles and different ways of camera movement that gave us the overall feeling of Jason, as you were saying, Dane, when he turned around without his mask, and then when he put on his mask, and then when he was on top of the Winnebago, and the camera moving backwards and downwards while looking at him on top of the RV. You know,
Mm-hmm. And that's less of. I mean, that for me is really where this movie stands out from the rest. Is that that's not even really effects as much as, well, I mean, there's definitely some as far as like the Winnebago and fire and spectacle and all that stuff, but it's all in service of what, any movie that wants to be taken remotely seriously, not so much in terms of tone, but like in terms of a piece of filmmaking, like something to put on your reel or whatever. They seem to have put their money towards hiring, just a better caliber of crew and really putting their money where their mouth is, or rather putting it in important areas that they should, such as, just creating iconic images that people won't forget. And I mean, that to me is the greatest effect of all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, whether it's spectacle or not, it's, you need to create those images that people just will not forget.
I think it's cool too that like maybe putting more of the money into that other stuff and more of the effort into that other stuff kind of necessitated them to use some old school tricks for pretty brutal effects, like when they fold the guy in half or twisting the girl's head. Even just, poking the lady in the mud puddle or whatever. It's like you don't have to see a bunch for that to be a brutal kill,
Yeah, that one where he twisted that girl's head off, that one kind of bugged me. It was, I don't know, it wasn't so much the brutality of that relative to the others. It's just, I like that character. That was a very brutal death.
Sure. Well, you didn't like seeing him give her some head?
Well, that's one. Now, one thing that I find interesting, I looked that actress up. She has 1,400 credited appearances for, I think it was Days of Our Lives. I'm wow. Like, that's well, she had a steady career after that.
That's nothing to dismiss. That's for sure.
Definitely not.
Yeah, she retired about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So Jake,
what's up?
Out of curiosity, because you're the best one to talk about when it comes
1438. What's up?
You're the best one to talk about when it comes to gore.
Okay.
So, how does this one compare gore-wise to the previous ones, in your opinion? To the, like, this is, you have to look away from the screen gore factor.
Well, it wasn't as bad as the previous one. But to be honest, it's gotten to the point where I don't even pay attention. I'm like, oh, a kill's coming up. Fuck it, I'll do something else for a minute. That's not what I care about at all. And so that's one of the reasons I'm kind of on this series. It could be the most creative death in the world, and I wouldn't give a shit. So that's, unless it's a character I really wanted to see them get it, which does happen occasionally. But yeah, I would say comparatively, I've seen worse in some of the other films. I'll say that.
I feel like they kind of toned it down a little bit as far as the kills, like not necessarily brutality, because brutality can be different regardless.
Right.
As far as the gore itself, I feel like they toned it down in this one.
Yeah.
Or you might say that whatever is there is being handled the way that it should, which is preferably in service of the story. So like part of why people are very shocked and upset by, like, say, a Mel Gibson film, which they tend to be very, like a one that he's directed, that they tend to be very gory and violent and all that stuff. Well, part of why that is not so much the gore itself, although that may be intense or whatever, but it's insofar as it serves the story, and that is ultimately what sets that apart, and that no matter how gory or not that you're going to be, that has to be what is the determining factor, because otherwise it's just spectacle or gory spectacle for its own sake, which, in all fairness, though, the gory spectacle that was there in the other movies did help to progress the field of movie special effects forward in some way.
Well, with that, we'll end this on music. You can't really... We touched on the music, and to me, I feel like it really did... To me, this was my favorite part of this, was they really did start amping it up to the rock and roll
Yeah.
Yep.
Love the Alice Cooper tracks. There were a couple other tracks as well that were rocking. And it's just, in general, a fun thing to listen to. It really changed it up, because the last 5 basically have been mostly...
Basic.
Yeah, I mean, we've been basically kind of like, well, that was definitely a soundtrack there.
Music was
right. I mean, I would... Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was just saying, most of the music in here is Alice Cooper. Of course, there's the He's Back, but then they have Teenage Frankenstein and Hard Rock Summer in there. And then the only other song in here is actually performed by Felony called Animal. So
that was the other one I was thinking about.
Well, when you got Alice Cooper on the soundtrack, it's like, what else needs to be said? You know it's going to rock.
Welcome to my night.
It's a to me, I think it's just really cool to see that sort of thing. I mean, it's a great it's great to see that rock and roll monster mashup, and I think that really goes a long way to making it that popular thing amongst the teens and the kids of that time.
Oh yeah, well, and it reminds me of Into the Fire from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. You know, like that helps to make that one stand out.
It's like I was gonna say. I think it's 5 had the 80s chick dancing or whatever. 4 I think had like some awkward attempt to make it feel 80s, but all of them previously kind of have like a little bit of a they're 80s movies and that's when they're made, but they have like an older vibe to it. Even the hillbilly characters in Part 5 were kind of just feel like something more late 70s, super early 80s to me, not like a this one feels like a proper 80s movie. I think it's the first one that I really did that for me, where it's like,
well, let's see. I guess that will be it. I thank you all for coming on. So let's go ahead with our final scenes. I'm going to just do a brief introduction to each of you, and you can tell me what crap I missed if you want before you tell me your final scenes, and then we'll move on. So I'm going to start with the 2 people that are brave enough to actually have their cameras on. We'll start with you, Dave. Of course, Dave is with Inside Movies Galore and Delusions of Grandeur, to some wonderful movie discussion groups who do stuff similar to what we've done here, maybe even better in many cases. So you should check us out. Of course, every Tuesday they do that. And of course, this coming Tuesday, so tomorrow, we're covering Sword of the Stranger and Big Trouble in Little China. So some fun stuff. But Dave, of course, anything I missed, go ahead and add in. But also your favorite scene.
As far as Delusions of Grandeur, I just went on with my friend Boris from Croatia about a movie called Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, so definitely check that out. Cool discussion that we just went on about. And as far as a thing that has to deal with 6, I just love the Frankenstein vibe of the film, the universal monster aspect of it. I mean, I think that's why a lot of people love 6 for what it is, and it kind of helps bring the Friday the 13th franchise into the limelight, so to speak, as far as anything. And I personally will probably return to it, looking at behind the scenes, since I'm still looking at my Shout Factory set this past month or so. So still have to look at some of the extras and stuff like that. So definitely some cool stuff there. So, in any case, just enjoy the film.
Let's see here. So Forrest is, of course, he's doing some production stuff with a bunch of various projects around.
Yes.
And of course, he gets to visit Camp Crystal Lake in the near future.
This upcoming Friday.
So that's going to be fun. Y'all have to tell us all about it once you get back. But of course, anything else you want to throw out there, and of course, your favorite scene from Part 6.
All right. I actually do have a web series that I'm an executive producer on called Toxic America, which is currently on Vimeo on demand.
All right.
First season's out right now. There's 5 episodes you can watch for $3. And then as far as favorite part, I would agree with David. I definitely like the classic Universal monster atmosphere of the movie, but also the Alice Cooper soundtrack. If I'm in my car and Teenage Frankenstein or Man in the Mask, or He's Back, the Man in the Mask comes on, I will crank that shit up.
Oh yeah. So then we're going to just start from what I can see as to the left to right. Mo, actually, no, not Mo. Jake just suddenly jumped over there. So I'll let you go. Jake, of course, being
Yes, I do that.
the SeptumSin versus the world, our site here. And helping me, we actually did get to rejoin and do some work together today, which is why we're so late getting started. But if there's anything else I need to add for you, that's cool. And then, of course, also your favorite scene, dude.
Well, I suppose that's it for now. I'm too tired to think of anything else. But as far as favorite scenes or moments or whatever, this one had more contenders than most of them did, but still, I don't know of anything that fully leaped off the page. I guess I will have to say the overall use of music in the film was, for me, a definite plus. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, like I said, they keep moving around, but we'll go with Dane. Dane, of course, we've got Indie Horror Creative, I believe is the name of the YouTube channel.
Indie Horror Film Creative.
We'll get it one day.
Don't worry out. But of course, there's a lot of cool stuff there. You get to hear from different film creators, but mostly, of course, Dane himself, and see some cool aspects of his collection and the hopefully quickly upcoming film school that he is going to be teaching us all in the near future. And of course, at the end of it all, we still have that favorite scene. So, of course, any additional information and your favorite scene, please.
Favorite scene would be, I think I like him actually emerging from the grave, puts on the mask, turns, dramatic lightning, and then transitions into the James Bond spoof, which then transitions into the credits, which I think that just kind of says it all right there. And extra special shout outs to does he think I'm a fart head? Yay! That cut, as well as just other little clever breaking of the fourth wall. Like, some people have a real sick idea entertainment. That was funny.
So, let's see. Okay, Mo. So, Mo, of course, you've got the Drunken Master Studios, which has 2 new reviews out, which are pretty cool stuff. One you have to kind of follow a link off of YouTube to grab at, but it's kind of cool to see some of these Asian horror films coming out, and just in general, a lot of cool stuff. Video games, horror, a little bit of Gamera, and some monsters in between. So you should check it out. Of course, favorite scene as well.
Oh, definitely, just a tie between the resurrection of him in the graveyard, because that's just so iconic, man. I mean, I'd fully agree with Dane. That scene in and of itself, you're watching something special as soon as it kicks off,
Then also with them having transitioned into the James Bond spoof, I think it just to add to that, it cements his own iconic status, but it pays homage to another icon, while at the same time not being as overt as it could have been. It's just a great blend of everything, and it definitely sets that tone of like you're about to watch a big movie, so just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Exactly. And then to that point, you know, if I had to like choose a hard favorite, definitely just that whole Winnebago scene. He puts that lady's face through the wall, and then he just stabs that guy in the friggin' skull. Which isn't something maybe previous Jason would have done, but he's like, yeah, I'm an undead dude. Fuck it. And he just rolls the Winnebago, and then he's up there standing in triumph.
So Dustin, of course, last but not least, with the Crypt of Horrors. It's a great YouTube channel. I've seen so far most of those episodes where you get to see some pretty neat stuff that he digs up. I guess going through the crypts and looking for various items. But what was your favorite scene?
Well, it's a little hard for me to pick because there is a lot to love in this movie. I think I like the scene with the Weekend Warriors where Jason runs across these people playing some kind of stupid office exercise.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're playing paintball in the woods, and Jason like takes them out and gets a bunch of gear in the process. Like. He gets them. It's so convenient that they show up. Like, he gets a machete, he gets throwing knives, he gets a utility belt, he gets all kinds of stuff.
Well, yeah, he doesn't utilize it, too. So he was all on it. My favorite scene is the Winnebago. I mean, it just is. The whole thing from start to finish is gold. And is a good reflection of what the series has become.
Solid gold.
So... with that being said, of course, thanks for watching us, and keep staying tuned for the rest of the week. And we will see you again next time, where we cover part 7 and 8 and finish out the numbered parts of the series. It's going to be fun.